In this episode, we are going to react to a recent piece from Popular Mechanics that asserts that humans are naturally telepathic. Hello, welcome to the Call Like I See It podcast. I'm James Keys, and joining me today is a man who, if you've ever seen him podcast, you know he's got that shine. Tunde Ogunlana. Tunde, are you ready to make sure we don't become dull and fall into that all work and no play trap?
Yeah, man. Now, hold on. I'm impressed, though. Are we talking Stephen King shine?
Yes, we are, sir.
That's impressive, man.
Yes, we are, sir.
Because, Dr. Sleep, that's a through line to Shining. So, okay.
All right.
Now I'm impressed.
Now, before we get started.
Now I'm flattered.
Before we get started, I ask that if you enjoy the show, you subscribe and like the show on YouTube or your podcast app. Doing so really helps the show out. Now, we're recording on February 3rd, 2026. And Tunde, we recently saw a piece that laid out the scientific case that humans are naturally telepathic. Now, this case introduced the idea of neural coupling and demonstrated using brain scans that in many type of cases involving communication or interaction, that the brainwaves of involved people can synchronize in ways that establish a deeper connection between the people. So Tunde, what stood out to you in this research? I mean, this is naturally telepathic, or the shine, is something that, is pretty crazy, man.
Yeah, well, let's go with the shine because this would be fun. Which is kind of fascinating to really think on a serious note that a lot of, I'm sure, these stories, right, even ancient stories about people's ability to communicate with their mind. Maybe this article and this kind of scientific research shows that there's something behind it.
Maybe they do something we didn't know, or some of it. Go back to different places. Yeah.
Listen, I'm fascinated by the fact that ancient scriptures, whether it's the Talmud, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita, whether it's Buddha's teachings, they talk about things like brain waves and vibrations. And so it's interesting that thousands of years ago, human beings still understood, like maybe they didn't know about the string theory in the way that we understand it by looking at, electron microscopes and all that. But they understood the relation of nature, kind of everything's connected, and the idea of waves.
And that we're connected waves to the ocean. Things also.
Correct. Yeah. And to nature. And if you look at like the Germanic tribes, the way that they worship trees and things like that, there's a very holistic way that humans all over the earth looked at, our relation to the rest of reality and physical and all that. So it's like one of those things that, we don't get enough like absolute proof, like, okay, the 1 + 1 = 2 on this one, but there's enough of this type of information I've seen just throughout my adult life to say, there's enough smoke there. I think there's a fire somewhere out there.
Yeah, well, now they're matching brain scans, so that's now we are getting into the kind of the way that, modern science tries to establish things, with the brain scans and stuff. I'll tell you, they had different scenarios that they talked about, one with like an adult and an infant, which was pretty interesting on how that happened. But the one that got me was the one that they talked about how when heterosexual people are kissing, how the brain, in some cases, not all the time, but in some cases, those scans can align depending on, I guess the people and their connection and so forth like that. So that was really cool to me, because it's like, okay, yeah, that's in a way you're like, okay, you can see how this or other kinds of behaviors, if this is possible, if this may happen, why you may have a deeper or stronger connection or feel a deeper or stronger connection with one person versus another, and you might have known that at certain times, like, oh yeah, or, like it just, sometimes you have a greater affinity for some people than others, and you can put that on superficial things, but sometimes it's not superficial things, or superficial things may be all relatively equal, but it's just you're digging somebody, you're feeling somebody. And it's like, I wonder if that's a thing, And then the other thing though, and this isn't in the piece, but made me think about is that with humans, like we're all, there's tall people, there's short people, there's strong people, there's weak people, there's smart people, there's people that are less smart. And so I wonder, like my mind naturally goes with this is like, oh, hold up. So there are probably people that are whose brain is better at this. And I wouldn't say that correlates to intelligence, but just whose brain is stronger at making these connections or receiving these connections than others, So what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Is that like, are there people out there that are able to, to influence our minds? Or is that like a way to, you can get power or wealth or adoration because you're able to, project your brain scan or your brain waves, and other people start getting in the same rhythm as you? Like, there are outliers in everything with humans. So I imagine there's outliers with this as well. And so there could be people up to no good, for all we know, that are synchronizing our brain waves and being like, okay, yeah, it's not Jedi mind trick necessarily, but something, and I know I might have got you with that reference, but please take it away.
Yeah. No, it's so they got me thinking that when I was reading that article about things like women's menstruation cycles, that we know that when women live together, enough, that they start menstruating on the same cycle. Yeah. And it's just interesting, right? Like, somehow their bodies are in tuned. And for whatever reason, maybe evolutionary or something, it just makes sense. I guess the women ovulate at the same time, so that's, to me, is fact. I never understood how that works. And I have already got a grown daughter. So being in a house with my wife and a teenage daughter when they're both at the same time of the month, not liking me, wasn't fun. But I can tell you that it's real. So that was one. The second was the concept of quantum entanglement, if we can get real.
Oh, here we go.
The idea.
Here we go.
So, I was coming for you.
Yes.
And so the idea that two particles can be on other sides of the universe and still be entangled.
Interact with each other.
Mirror each other. So, if we're made up of particles, right? And that's in our brains. And we know that particles can be entangled at vast distances. Then that doesn't mean that A equals B, right? Or whatever, 1 + 1 = 2. But it does tell you, okay, there's something there.
Yeah.
This, I can believe this.
That space or distance is not a determinative thing on the ability to interact, And so, no, I mean, like, that's real. That I didn't think we'd go quantum, but I guess I should have thought that's my mistake.
I was ready for
that's my mistake. But no, I mean, when you think about it though, in that context, I mean, and I think about this often anyway, and whether it be in the context of religion or just our interaction with our surroundings, is that there are things going on that we don't necessarily fully perceive of, or definitely that we don't understand. Even in our current, like we may understand why it rains, while 1,000 years ago they didn't understand why it rained. But there's still things going on that we have vague to no perception of, and or things that we maybe can perceive at a certain level, but not a full level, and don't understand, and so forth. So this, to me, just falls into that trap. Like the ability to observe something, not know the mechanism that's making it happen, but yet still believe it and still like, okay, incorporate that into your life. We're able to do that. You just gave an example from your own, life, over the past 20 years or whatever or 15 years or whatever that where that was something you observed. You can't look that up and they'll give you some detailed reason why, but it's happening. It's happening. So sometimes this is where science can get us into trouble. Because with science, a lot of times, if we can't quantify and measure it, then we're like, it doesn't exist. And it's like, well, that's not going to work. Religion was better with that. Okay, now, religion's not infallible. Like they came up with some cockamamie things on as far, hey, we got to, go sacrifice virgins in order to make it rain. So, but the fact that they didn't understand the mechanism didn't stop them from believing there was a connection. So I think, though, but back to the point, though, science a lot of times will try to convince us that things don't exist if they can't quantify them. And that's just with our state of little knowledge relative to what's going on. That's just a very dangerous kind of mindset to have. And I'm not a person advocating against science. I think science is good, but I just think it's always important in any venture, but science and religion, like to understand the limitations and to not try to paper over the limitations, but actually to appreciate, to respect the limitations of what you're doing at a given moment so that you can then fully gain the benefits of something and try to avoid some of the worst outcomes.
Yeah, man. And I'll finish on this. this is going to sound stupid, but it's serious.
What a way to preface it.
Comparing. Yeah, no, because I am serious, but it's going to sound stupid. I
realized put your
that
glasses on first then.
I have, I can, but no, they're kind of far away.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I only got my readers, so I can't look at the screen. Else, But that's how old I am. I got readers now. No, it's funny. My chocolate lab, I was thinking about it. My Labrador Retriever, my dog, that me and that dude are quantum entangled mentally like crazy. And that's what I was thinking, that like my wife makes fun of us. Me and that dog are so close. And they both of us know, like if that dog has one hair off, I know. And if and that dog watches me so much, he knows what kind of clothes I put on. If he's, he'll tag, his tail will wag or won't wag because he'll know if I'm leaving. And I kind of realized, I was like, man, that's another example where there's this kind of connection mentally between the two beings, right? Like he's a dog, I'm a human. But we are so close from an emotional standpoint and proximity every day, because especially since I started working more out of the house since the pandemic, right?
Oh, man, I thought you were going to say, especially since you got that shine.
Well, maybe I always had the shine, and this is the example that it's there.
Hey.
But it's cool that sometimes my dog talks, so that might be when the actual shine is. I know he really can't talk, but when he talks to me, it's like, okay.
But now, since you said since the pandemic, you've noticed it even more?
Well, just because since I work from home more, just because of the way reality has become for most of us, you figure he's an 8-year-old dog and it's been 6 years since the pandemic. Yeah. So most of his life, he's been around me almost every day, just constantly. And so there becomes this, that's what I mean. It's kind of weird. I was thinking about it reading. I was like, shit, I'm entangled with this dog. Yeah. But it's cool because in the end, it's like it teaches me something new. Like, what's a relationship? And I don't mean this in a weird way or gross way. I'm just saying, like, the dog is a relationship for me emotionally, right? He's my buddy in a certain way, and I'm his buddy. So there is a connection there, even though I can't do, calculus equations with him, and I can't talk to him about philosophical stuff, right? But there's still an entanglement there at a kind of mental and emotional level. So it's interesting.
I mean, that wasn't a part of the study, but it definitely sounds like a logical extension of it. That, and I would say, I was going to finish with the point that you kind of anticipated there, was just that the other thing I thought about this is the longer you're around someone, I would imagine that even if the connection doesn't immediately, and the brain waves necessarily might not immediately snap in. Like with some people, it might snap in immediately. And it's just like I said, you got a vibe, I just got the vibe like that. But other times it may be like you're around somebody enough and then these waves start to align also, because in the article, they're talking about the brain as like a wireless transmitter, so to speak, And so in that kind of context, there's a lot of directions and a lot of ways that you can see how something like this can impact our, again, communication and interaction, and they talk about how, the interaction and communication, well, interaction, of course, but communication, it's a two-way thing, so to speak, in that it's understandable how if this is a phenomenon, which again, they're establishing that it is, that it happens. And they talk about things that require creativity and cooperation are things that can bring it out even more. And so I imagine the more you're around somebody, it's something that can increase it as well. So
Yeah. And I would think, man, that got me thinking about things like, whether the military and boot camp, how they have
team sports too,
young men, team. Yeah. And team sports, kind of like, or even like when you do a retreat and they have you do physical things like, people, you fall down into the crowd and you got to trust that they're going to catch you, that kind of stuff. I think you're right, James, that's all, whether the people who created that stuff understood how it actually worked or not.
Or they just saw the results.
It builds those connections.
They could have just saw the results. But again, not understood why.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to lean into
it. And, and maybe that's the foundation of things like trust, right? The ability to build trust is to build these kind of unseen, entangled connections between the brains.
Alignment.
And maybe that is something like divorce and all that is when those subconscious connections break down.
Yeah. Or at least a part of it, or I thought they could play a factor.
That might means we got to do a follow-up show. Worse than when people fight, what causes that?
Yeah. Well, they got to do a follow-up study. So the last thing I'll add before we close this up then is that with what you just said, one of the interesting things was they said it can happen remotely, but it's stronger in person. So that leads to kind of how life has changed a little bit and where people are less in person. I wonder if that means that we have less opportunity to get our brain waves kind of aligned and so forth.
Or maybe we're a bit confused because we're aligning with people that are all over the place on the internet, right? It feels a bit weirder than normal, like day to day.
No, for sure.
How we've normally done it as humans.
Yeah. So, but I think
someone needs to do this follow up study. This is actually interesting.
No,
it's not going to be me, but I'll be looking out for it.
Yeah. I think we'll wrap this part from here. We'll have a second part of today's episode as well coming up shortly. So please join us for that as well. We appreciate it again, always, for joining us on Call Like I See It podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.